Welcome to the Managing FLA Timecards and Exceptions training. During this training, we will review how to manage FLA timecards and exceptions, and will expand on lessons learned from Kronos LMS training videos, exceptions, and pay period approval. Managing timecard and exceptions is critical to ensure employees are working to set schedules and being paid correctly. At the completion of this course, you should be familiar with timing and responsibilities for reviewing and approving timecards and exceptions, the various exception types, how to review and address employee noncompliance. Managing exceptions and reviewing and approving timecards are critical activities that need to be performed for three main reasons. Timecard management ensures that timecards are accurate. Employees' time records should be reviewed by managers, and all exceptions should be addressed to ensure that they accurately reflect work time. Timecard management supports timely payroll submission. When not addressed in the system, certain exception types will prevent payroll submission. By addressing timecard exceptions by 10 a.m. for the prior day, there will be less exceptions to review on the last day of the pay period. In order for payroll to be processed, all exceptions must be addressed and timecards approved by 1 p.m. local time on the day after the work week has passed. Timecard management ensures the scheduled payment of wages. By ensuring that timecards are approved and submitted on time, employees will receive pay as expected. Managing timecards and exceptions is critical in order to support the labor management process. The specific responsibilities that support the labor management process make up the labor management routine. This training will focus on the daily activity, review and address employee exceptions, as well as the weekly activity, review and approve timecards. Depending on the levels of oversight at your site, executional responsibilities may be held by one or multiple people. In profit centers with multiple locations and levels of oversight, the profit center oversight team, for example, the site leader controller, may be responsible for approving timecards only, whereas the location execution team, for example, location managers or supervisors, may be responsible for creating schedules and addressing exceptions. In profit centers with one level of oversight, the profit center oversight may be responsible for creating schedules, addressing exceptions, and approving timecards. If this describes your profit center, please be sure to review the Creating and Adjusting Schedules training. In both scenarios, it is critical to establish a feedback loop through weekly meetings or daily huddles to ensure communication between profit center oversight and employees. In the LMS Kronos training, you learned about exceptions, or instances when employee punch behavior or attendance violates pre-built rules in Kronos. In the training, you learned about managing two types of exceptions. Major exceptions affect an employee's pay and must be addressed prior to processing payroll. Other exceptions are informational and will not stop payroll from processing, however must be reviewed on a daily basis to manage performance, reinforce proper punching behavior, and control labor costs. The two types of major exceptions are missed punches and unexcused absences. Missed punches occur when an employee fails to punch in or out, such as at the start of a shift, in or out for a meal break, or at the end of a shift. Missed punches must be addressed prior to submitting payroll to ensure employees are paid properly. Before making edits to an employee's time card, you must obtain employee consent and fill out the time record, edit, and authorization form located on the GOE website accessed through the Labor Management Help link in Kronos. Unexcused absences are flagged when an employee is scheduled to work, but no punches were recorded. Unexcused absences must be reviewed to ensure time cards account for all employee time worked. Other exceptions, such as meal breaks, arrival, and departure exceptions, will not stop payroll from processing, but must be reviewed on a daily basis. The arrival and departure exception types are dictated by punch restrictions, where the window of time employees are able to punch are restricted. In this example, an employee is scheduled to work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. If an employee's scheduled clock-in time is 7 a.m., the employee is able to punch in with no exceptions 5 minutes before to 10 minutes late. Punching in 10 minutes late will result in a late-in exception. A manager override is required for an employee to punch in more than 5 minutes early, which will result in an early-in or very early-in exception. If their scheduled clock-out time is 3 p.m., the employee is able to punch out with no exceptions 10 minutes early to 5 minutes late. If they punch out more than 10 minutes early, they will receive an early-out exception. If an employee punches out between 5 and 15 minutes, this will result in a late-out exception. At 15 minutes, a manager override is required for an employee to punch out. and will result in a very laid out exception. Early ins, very early ins, late outs, and very late outs are key exceptions to be mindful of daily since they have the greatest impact on unscheduled labor cost over time. Managers should be aware of very early ins, and very late outs in real time since they are required to override restrictions at the clock and bad behavior can be addressed immediately. Keep an eye on employee time cards each week where employees are clocking in up to 5 minutes before their start time and receiving an extra 5 minutes of pay daily. Late outs are also key exceptions to review since managers are not required to override at the clock and employees can be receiving up to 15 minutes of pay daily without restriction. There are 3 main Kronos reports that should be utilized in order to understand how labor cost is associated with employee punching behavior. As profit center oversight, it is critical to have an understanding of how exceptions are trending at your account and how labor cost is impacted by reviewing the Aramark Kronos Performance Report and Exception Summary Report. In order for the location execution team to reinforce proper punching behavior with specific employees, review the Aramark Exception Summary Report. The Aramark Kronos Performance Report is a report that details labor performance metric trends, including scheduled hours and wages versus actual hours and wages, unscheduled hours worked and paid lunch breaks, overtime, and exceptions. In regards to time card management, Profit Center Oversight should review this report weekly for insight into exceptions and how many punches were missed or edited by a manager over a 6-week period. Review the report's training for additional details about running and reviewing this report. The Exception Summary Report is a report that provides a visual and numerical representation of total exceptions for a selected period. It also provides a detailed breakdown of total number of exceptions by employee and the associated wage liability. Profit Center Oversight should utilize this report weekly to understand at a high level what exceptions are causing the most issues and address specific behavioral issues with employees. Review the report's training for additional details about running and reviewing this report. The Aramark Exception Summary is a customized Aramark report that details how many exceptions employees receive for a selected time period and is broken out by exception type with associated wage liability. Location execution should utilize this report daily to understand any specific behavioral issues that need to be addressed with specific employees. Review the report's training for additional details about running and reviewing this report. Now that you've gathered insight into employee behavior at your account, the next step would be to address employee noncompliance. Before speaking with employees individually, define how your site will address employee noncompliance through a performance management plan. For example, create a system for tracking exceptions and hold employees accountable to improvement by defining consequences. Define a performance management plan that works for your site, but ensure that the plan is clear, communicated, consistent, and has consequences for noncompliance. First, be sure that your performance management plan is clear and cannot be misinterpreted. Ensure management understands their responsibilities in regards to the performance management plan, including what would dictate a point or strike, and the cadence for reviewing Kronos exception reports. Second, be sure that your plan is communicated. Ensure that your performance management plan is formally communicated to all employees. Document your plan and have all employees sign that they have read and are aware of noncompliance consequences. Reiterate this plan as necessary, either individually or at a daily shift huddle. Consistent. If managers do not actively enforce the performance management plan, employee behavior will not improve. Ensure that the management team continues to act on the prescribed cadence and evaluate all employees fairly. Consequences. Hold employees accountable to improvement by defining consequences. Creating schedules in Kronos prior to the week start and actively adjusting schedules during the work week ultimately simplifies the time card management process. Managing and adjusting an active schedule in Kronos is critical for 3 main reasons. First, minimizes unnecessary exceptions. By creating as accurate a schedule as possible in Kronos prior to the start of the work week, employees will be able to punch in on time, which will minimize the number of exceptions that need to be addressed. Ensures timely payroll submission. Minimizing the number of exceptions that need to be addressed each day means there will be less exceptions to address at the end of the week, ensuring payroll is submitted on time. Provides actionable reports. If high punch edit and exception rates are due to inaccurate schedules in Kronos, Kronos exception reports provide no benefit to the manager. Ensuring that schedules are as accurate as possible allows managers to view deviations to the schedule and ability to address behavioral issues with employees as necessary. If you are responsible for creating and adjusting schedules in Kronos, review the Create and Adjust Schedules training for more information. Now that you understand the timing and responsibilities for reviewing and approving time cards and exceptions, the various exception types, and how to review and address employee noncompliance, let's review what you need to do next. Save time by auto-scheduling exception reports to appear in your Outlook inbox daily or weekly. Define manager expectations for addressing exceptions, reviewing reports, and acting on employee noncompliance. Discuss how performance is managed at your account. Do you have a system for handling behavioral noncompliance? Reiterate behavioral expectations to employees at your next shift huddle. This concludes the Managing FLA Timecards and Exceptions training.